they are very harmful. So it is very much important to say that. So this gender-based violence should be understood not in isolation. If it is in isolation, is when you think that men are killing men, we are killing women. That is not only that. Remember, this is informed by a particular system called patriarchy. And the patriarchal system is the one that values men than women. So the life of a woman is very cheap, just like apartheid. Apartheid is an example of oppression based on race, or slavery in the US, if you will. So black people, the system of apartheid was introduced, and it was socially engineered in such a way that black people were regarded as inferior and white people were regarded as superior. That was the social order. And it was carried through different regulations, through different institutions, through the media, through the religion, and so on and so forth. The very same thing happens with regard to gender-based violence. When we are talking about gender oppression, you are privileging men over women. So just like apartheid. So there are so many things that are interconnected. There is oppression which is based on class, the haves and the have-nots. And capitalism, that's if I give it a Marxist analogy. Capitalism is an example of an oppression based on class, in the sense that we've got the haves and the have-nots, the property and the propertyless, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. That is how we call them. So that is oppression based on class. And based on race is an example is apartheid. You're being disadvantaged because of the color of your skin. And all these things are not divinely ordained. They're not God-given, not at all. They are socially engineered. They are socially constructed. Hence, we call them artifacts of the community. The fact that women are women, they're not born women. They were not born male or female. There is nothing like that. It is not natural. It is a social construct. That is why there is this French philosopher called Simone de Beauvoir. She says that women are not born women. They are born into becoming women. They are born in, and then Frantz Fanon talked about black people. Black people, you are not oppressed because you are black. You are not oppressed because you are black. You are not oppressed because you are black. You became black because you are oppressed. So the fact that you are black is not something that you are born with. It is something which was structured by the society. It was engineered, but those who want to oppress you, because it has to do with privilege. Because if you are oppressed, there are certain privileges that you cannot access. So oppression is about deprivation and imposition. You are deprived from opportunities, and then there are certain things that you are imposed to believe in. For example, when in inferiority and superiority. So this gender-based violence, that needs to be understood. In order to understand the solution, you cannot, I always use this medical term to say that in order to understand the illness of a patient, the doctor needs to diagnose. To diagnose is to find the root cause, not the symptoms, the root cause. What is the root cause of gender-based violence? In order to understand the root cause, you need to understand it, because understanding the root cause, which is the diagnosis, will lead to a suitable course of action, and it will prescribe the prognosis, what will be the medical course of action. That is something which is very much important. So gender-based violence, if you want to understand it, if you want to come up with solution, you need to understand the system of patriarchy, the system that privileges men, that disadvantages women. That is something which is very much important. So you need to understand the whole concept that oppression, the way in which it started, it is a question of differentiation. You are working with difference. Working with difference is not a problem. The fact that a man, the other one is a woman, is not a problem. The problem is when you are using that as an arbiter to distribute resources. When you are using that as an instrument to separate people, to make a determination in terms of power relations, to want to impose certain things on other people, to want to deprive people of certain opportunities and benefits within the society. So oppression Its antithesis is social justice. Gender-based violence. When we're talking about gender-based violence, if you want to fight gender-based violence, the goal of fighting gender-based violence is to ensure social justice on part of women. Social, cultural, political, economic justice. Those are the issues that you need to address. So you cannot address, for example, the justice system. You need to understand how to analyze gender-based violence. Gender-based violence manifests itself differently. And there is this level of analysis. When you're analyzing gender-based violence, you need to start with the institutions. Look at the institutions in government. Are they supporting women? Are they working toward creating conditions for achievement of gender justice? The criminal justice systems, for example. You still remember the case of that pastor, Nigerian pastor called Omotoso. And there was a woman who is very strong, who came to testify against him in court. You still remember how she was questioned, the manner in which she was questioned by the prosecutor. The prosecutor was white as well, because the issue of race also came into the picture as well. How she was questioned. You could see the counsel, you could see that she was being victimized. It was not only about her. What they were saying, that is the institution, that's why I'm saying that is institutional sexism. They were saying, here is a woman who is very strong, but they were showing an example. This example, the way in which she was interrogated, it was to give an example to every woman that if you go through this particular process of harm, sexual harassment or rape, for example, if you go through this party and you go to court, and then this is what you're going to be exposed to. What kind of message are they sending out to women? The institutional system. It says women, it discourages women. So now they're not going to come forward, because every time they come forward, they're getting embarrassed. They're getting devalued in public. That is why I'm talking about institutional sexism. And there is also personal sexism. Personal sexism, it happens between people, men and men, women and men. But I also want to raise the issue of lateral violence or lateral horizontal violence, violence, women on women violence. When a woman hires a man to kill a woman, you call it women and on women violence, but that is not it. You're not problematizing it. You need to understand that the system which I spoke about, which is patriarchy, has socialized men in such a way that they embrace privilege, and women, they embrace inferiority. To such an extent that women, they were socialized to look up to men, because it says that the culture, the honors, the symbols that are honored are those of the men. That is why that woman has embraced that particular, she became a host to the oppressor. She became sexist precisely because she was acting like a man. That is why she was able to hire people in order to kill that particular woman who was pregnant, unfortunately. So that is lateral violence or horizontal violence. And many people say, women are killing women. They don't understand. It is a short-sighted approach of analyzing issues. You need to go deeper and look into the system. Context matter. And when we're talking about context, you're talking about issues of time and space, where spatial and temporal matters. You need to take into context. This is a context, social, cultural, political, and factors that influence that particular environment is very much important. So this is a topic which is very close to my heart. And then I am talking about patriarchy. I'm saying gender-based violence. There is nothing that you are going to do. We are not going to sort out the problem as long as we are still burying our heads into the sand and thinking that by arresting people, that is going to come to an end. That is very reactive. We need to be proactive. Proactive, let us face the matter. At the core of the matter is patriarchy. And I have indicated that patriarchy is male-dominated, is male-identified, is male-centered. So if we don't address patriarchy, which privileges men, which gives men this sense of entitlement, then we're not going to address the issue of gender-based violence. And then I think I need to pause, Mr. Rakolote, so that I can allow people to start engaging on these particular issues as well. Rakolote. Rakolote. So I can continue until Sediko.
We are having fun. You can continue, and we are learning a lot. We can go on for the next 5 hours.
Yes, because I always only remember only men can be patriarchal.
Yes.
Women cannot be patriarchal. It's just like white people. I've had many people saying that black people can be racist. Black people cannot be racist precisely because racism is a system which was designed. It was institutionalized, meaning that there were laws, there were policies, there were interventions, the religion was used, and so on and so forth, in order to create that particular social order.
Yes, definitely.
Are superior. So there is no way that black people can be racist. If you want to analyze that, if you are saying black people can be racist, you are historical, meaning that you are not taking into account the fact that there was apartheid in South Africa, there was slavery in USA, there were laws which were designed in order to make sure that you are narrativizing that particular phenomenon. You are making a narrative, you are making it to be an idea, because it is ideological. An idea says, this is the idea, there is a center and there is a periphery. There is black and there is white. There is high and there is down. There is dualism, there is superior, there is inferior. There is emotions, there is rationality, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
So basically, that is the situation. And then I am saying racism, patriarchy, Islamophobia, homophobia, all these things are examples of oppression, but they manifest themselves differently. So I am now linking them because you need to adopt an intersectional approach. If you want to deal with gender-based violence, you cannot deal with gender-based violence without looking at the economic status of our women. You cannot deal with it without the cultural status of our women. All these particular issues have to be integrated so that you come up with a holistic strategy of dealing with them. So it is very much important that you take that into account as well. Blacks cannot be racist. Why? Because black people, there was never a law which was saying that black people are superior, white people are inferior. So women cannot be patriarchal because there was never a legislation, there was no statute to say that women are superior, men are inferior. So it has to do with whose ox was God. Whose ox was God. That is why we are talking about redress. We are talking about the restitutionary programs to say, let us redress this situation because these people's ox was God. So we need to compensate them. Affirmative action. Whether it's working or not work, I think it's up to you to conjecture. You can assess that one. I would like to have somebody coming into that one to say, to make a presentation about affirmative action. To what extent is it promoting gender equality and so on and so forth. And then also the notion of gender equality. We need to understand it. When we're talking about gender equality, there are two conceptions. The first conception is traditional or procedural equality. That is equality before the law. That is the Constitution. It says that, entitlement, you are all equal before the law. But the problem is that it does not take into account the fact that we are not similarly situated. Women, black people, white people are not similarly situated if you look at history. So that is the problem with procedural equality. We need substantive equality. We need equality which is substantive. That is to say that let's come up with strategies that will ensure that women are well represented in all structures of influence within the society. Not only that, also participate to ensure that they do not experience problems like gender-based violence. They don't. They should not. Why should they? Just because of their gender. It should not be that way. But more importantly, it's about the structures. You know, like I said, gender-based violence is not happening in an island. It is within the society. There are structures, there are systems, there are processes, there are practices, there are behavioral practices. There are behavioral practices that are in the society that we need to dismantle. So many times politicians talk about gender equality when they have put the woman in a position of power. That is not enough. We need the system, the institutions, the institutional logics are still privileging male superiority or male supremacy. So we need to deal with that. And the very same thing, we can say, the very same argument could be applied, I strongly argue, to when we are talking about racism, when we are talking about the effects of apartheid. That's what I'm talking about. I'm a student of oppression, so I don't want to talk and talk and talk and control the 10 length. And then I need people to start engaging with my thesis so that we can exchange ideas.
I would like to engage leadership.
Yes, yes.
Speaking, ne?
Sorry, let's have order in the house. Thank you so much, Ntate Komane. What we are going to do now, we will then have people raise up their hands and we'll take them and we take their questions, then we respond. We have a discussion. Let's have order in the house. But before I start taking questions, let's first appreciate your presentation, Ntate Komane, and appreciate your time to come and share with us your views regarding the subjugation of women by men. We have raised some key issues here. One that I have highlighted is the intersectional approach, where you talk about we should look at the economic status of our women, and we should look at cultural status of women. The other thing that you raised is about the gender equality. You spoke about procedural equality and also substantive equality. And in your closing, you spoke about the representation of women in society, but you also touched on quantitative representation vis-a-vis qualitative representation, whereby you argue about institutional logics so that we avoid just quantitative representation that is not even qualitative. Before a waste of time, I'll then allow colleagues to raise their questions, their comments, and then we can engage. I see Ntate Ronald Tobejani, his hand is up. I see Commissioner Ntuli Kobatla Lindiwe, you'll be the second. Then MOG, I don't know MOG if it's the same person as Ronald Tobejani. You'll be the third person. Can you come in and Ntate Ronald Tobejani?
Yes, leadership, I would like to engage. Mr. Komane, I'm sure you are quite cognizant of the fact that many women out there, they are crying for the reinstatement of the death penalty in order to mitigate this pandemic of gender-based violence. So I want to know, leadership, that what's your take on that one?
Okay, let's take the question from Commissioner Ntuli, then we'll answer them. We'll answer 3 questions at a time. Commissioner Ntuli.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Sediko, and thank you very much for a well-prepared, well-presented, informative presentation. You know, I always say I know it all when it comes to gender, but I've learned so much today. Mine is just, I need more information. You talked about epistemology and ontology. I'm more interested in the ontology. It is my brain so much that I cannot explain. Thank you very much, Commissioner Rakolote.
Thanks, Commissioner Ntuli. Over to you, Ntate Komane.
Thank you very much. I think the death penalty, that particular view should be contextualized within the Constitution. The Constitution is the supreme law of the country, and any conduct which is not consistent with it is invalid. And then perhaps we need to take it from there. But my take is that if you look at the criminal justice system of South Africa, it's not that much to deal with issues of death penalty. Why? Precisely because if you look at history, it was designed in such a way that it was political. It was politicized, meaning that it was to track down those who were opposing the government. So until we transform the system in order to be ready to deal with all this plethora of deviation within our society, then we can talk about death penalty. But now I do not think that we are ready, precisely because we need to strengthen capacities, institutional capacity, so to speak, in order to arrive at that particular conclusion. The second one is the ontology. I started by saying that it is about, when you are asking what ontology has to do with what is reality, what is knowledge. It has to, is an identity issue. What is it? What is knowledge? What is the reality? So that is why we are saying this is, what is the ontological status of this thing? We want to understand its, what are its mechanisms? Why is it important? How is it manifesting itself? All these mechanics, all these issues around it, we call it ontology, because it has to do with understanding its nature. You can delineate its typology, say these are different types of things. You are still on the issue of ontology. It's a philosophical concept. Philosophical, we talk about ontology, and then what is knowledge, and then epistemology is ways of knowing knowledge. And then if we want to extend it more, we can also add the issue of methodology. What is it that you are going to do in order to know that which you want to know? That is something which is very much important. That is a methodology. So methodology is like when you are doing research, there are two methods. There is deductive and there is deductive and inductive. And then inductive is the one which you start by making observations based on the observations that you have made, based on the data that you have collected. It's empirical. It's based on empiricism. That is why you collect data, and then on the basis of that, then you can develop a particular theory going forward. But deductive is when you start with an hypothesis. That is why it is based on rationalism. Rationality is based on logic. That is something which is very much important, or on logic. So we can engage further on these ones, because I have written extensively about them. So I can share some articles about it as well, just to enrich that particular understand, deepen and extend colleagues' understanding on that particular matter.
Okay, we will take Ndate Moyo, and then again I can see Ronaldo Tobejani want to come back. But before we take Pastor Moyo, I want to emphasize a point on Section 11 of our Constitution of the country, which talks about everyone has the right to life.
Rakolote, please raise your voice. I cannot hear you. You are not audible from this side.
Okay, I'm saying
yes.
We are going to take Pastor Moyo. He will be followed by Tobejani again. And I think Commissioner Tuliko Ubata she's raising her hand again. But what I'm saying is that before we take Pastor Moyo, I'm saying
that there was Mohasha chairperson. Sorry,
I didn't even see, but I can't see the hand.
MOG.
MOG. Okay, we'll start with MOG, followed by Moyo, then Tobejani, then back to Tuliko Ubata Lindiwe. But before we go to MOG, I'm saying, back to the point of death penalty. You touch on the issue of the Constitution. Then I want to quote it. It's there in Section 11 of our Constitution. It says everyone has the right to life. Irrespective of whether a person committed murder or rape, that person has got the right to life. That is in the Constitution. So for us to move towards bringing in the death penalty, like Komane is saying, we should look at the Constitution. Because if we do something that is unconstitutional, when we are a constitutional democracy, that will be against the law of the same laws that we are being governed with. So if we want to push towards a death penalty, first we must look at the Constitution, because the Constitution provides the right to life. And that right, unlike other rights, that right cannot be limited by Section 36 of our Constitution that talks about the limitation of the rights. So Without a waste of time, we'll take Ntate Mohasho, and then followed by Ntate Moyo, then Tobejane, and then to the Global. Ntate Mohasho.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have made a few notes as the speaker is going through the presentation, and I would like to first thank the speaker for taking the time, the courage to put a forum as important as this, going through the times we're going through in the country. I've got 3 points to make, Mr. Speaker. I picked a point as you were delving into the mechanics of oppression. You were explaining how a person oppresses another. You touched a point of an employer and employee. I understand differently how that relation gets to host what we want to call oppression, okay? If I am Mohaile Mohasho and I ask for a job at Vodacom, I am given work there, and then I'm given a contract, and then I work there. And in your explanation, you went on to say, when the remuneration is not commensurate to the labor provided, that is an equivalent of oppression. How, in a constitutional republic, do I claim that I am oppressed by Vodacom if I am not obliged to work at Vodacom? Now, what I'm saying in a nutshell is this, on this point. Am I oppressed by Vodacom if I am not forced by any law to continue providing my labor to Vodacom? So in essence, I see a hole in your tying of oppression to that particular scenario. I refute that what you're talking about there is oppression, because in an oppressed situation, I am without options. I do not have a voice in the equation. So that is point one. On my point two, my good speaker, you went to you sampled a case in the Eastern Cape. Mr. Omotoso and the very courageous young woman that is in the case. You equated the activities of the lawyer of the offender to oppression, or you linked those two. When a lawyer defends an offender, they have a job because they get paid by the offender to defend the offender. When they harass the claimant, we cannot mechanically tie that to oppression or othering or subjugation. You're talking about a person at work delivering a service, a professional service at that, to defend his client. I have a problem tying that particular equation to the word oppression. That is my point two. My last point, racism and blackness. I have a challenge linking racism and blackness. Mechanically, okay, blacks are a group of people. Racism is an energy, it is an attitude that can be hosted by a body that lives on earth. The body can be white, the body can be yellow, the body can be black. It has got an ability to host the energy that we call racism. It is an attitude that I can apply to a person of a different color or origin to myself. What I find is problematic in your scientific analysis of racism is you tend to equate racism to apartheid. Where it falls apart is racism remains the energy that I can host inside me, while apartheid is a set of laws that were used to subjugate a group of people. It could have been white people, it could have been black people, it could have been yellow people, it could have been brown people. But racism and apartheid cannot be equated. One remains an energy, another is a system. And I would like to leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Tate Mohashwa. What we will do, because you made a lot of submissions, I will allow Tate Komane to respond. Then,
thank you.
Then we can go to Tate Moyo. We can go to Moyo after that.
Yeah, let me start with the issue of racism and apartheid. He talks about energy and the system. And I am saying here, apartheid is a system. It is a system which was specially designed to oppress Black people in South Africa. Its equivalent, yes, its equivalent is slavery in the US. Slavery was a system which was designed to oppress people of color. Color in this context is Black. So you need to understand oppression as a system and apartheid as an example of racism, because it is a system. And when we're talking about system, we are not talking about, we are talking about structures, we are talking about policies, we're talking about laws, we're talking about interventions that are structured together in order to achieve a particular end. In this particular case, oppression of a Black person. So it is a system. A system is very holistic. It means it is advanced using various mechanisms. Can talk about the religion. We know how religion was used in order to advance the issue of white superiority and Black inferiority. Calvinism in particular. That is the tradition which was used in order to oppress Black people, because white people justify oppression of Black people or apartheid within the notion of Calvinism, which talks about predetermined destination. Because Calvinism talks about the fact that people or individuals have got a predetermined destination. So white people use that particular one in order to justify apartheid. And apartheid is a pure example of racism. Racism is a set of systems. It is not isolated. They are not siloed, not under no circumstances whatsoever that you need to have a fragmented understanding. Black people cannot be racist, I argue, precisely because there was never, I repeat, there was never a legislation which was designed to create Black superiority and white inferiority. So you need to be historical instead of being historical. So if you are historicizing, you look back as to what happened. That is why I cited an example of whose ox was God's. During apartheid, whose ox was God? It is Black people's ox which was God. Hence we are talking about redress. Hence we are talking about Black economic empowerment. We are talking about all this restitutionary because we are looking back. Because historians will tell you that in order to understand a particular phenomenon, you need to be looking back. You need to put it in context. So you need to differentiate between prejudice, stereotypes, and discrimination. And I will tell you why they constitute bias. Prejudice, when we are saying we are racially prejudiced, anybody can be racially prejudiced. White people, Black people, across the board. Yes, because prejudice talks to the fact that you dislike. Yeah, is the energy that you are speaking about, is the affective, the emotions that you are talking about, and is racial prejudice. I don't like Black people, I don't like Indians, I don't like, and so on. That is prejudice, but stereotype. It's not racism as well, and I will tell you why. Stereotypes is at the cognitive level. Cognitive level is when you are making certain assumptions about a particular phenomenon. For example, the fact that Black people are always generally tardy and African time. And they are generally tardy, meaning that they are not on time. That is stereotypical. The fact that Black people are lazy, Black people are deceased, Black people cannot keep it in their hands, and so on and so forth. That is stereotypical assumption. All right, that finds itself in discrimination. So I am saying that stereotypes have to do with the cognitive, right? And the energy that we are talking about, the energy, is the affective, is the emotion, the dislike of a person. Because all of them contribute toward gender oppression. And there is two ways in which you need to understand the causes of a particular thing. If we are saying this thing causes this, you need to understand it in two ways. The first one is deterministic way, meaning that if you open the door, it's going to rain. That is deterministic way. And the second one is probabilistic way. Probabilistic is to say that if you open the door, it may rain. These are probability scales that we are talking about. So it's very much important. And another issue is the issue of exploitation and oppression. Please do not cause confusion between the two concepts. I have indicated that oppression is a system and oppression manifests itself, among others, through exploitation. Through exploitation. That is something which is very much important. So the two are not equivalent. One is the part of the other. It's like South Africans. You are a South African, Mr. Mohashu. You are not South Africa. You need to be very clear about that. You are South African. You are the part of South Africa. You are not South African yourself. So what?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Komane. Can we take Pastor Moyo?
Let me listen. This one here is the issue of he talks about the lawyer. The lawyer was paid by the press, the defendant, in order to. That is why she is harassing. Harassing in itself is injurious. It means it causes damage, psychologically and emotionally. So it causes that. It is a problematic way. The way we are not saying that she should not be questioned, but what we are saying the manner in which was questioned was to cite an example to remind of her powerlessness, the fact that women are powerless, women are marginalized, women are mistreated. So women have no cultural authority in the society. The manner in which she was harassed, and I'm quoting you, but the very same lawyer you're thinking about who was paid, the manner of doing it. So that is why we are saying that it is institutional, but it's also interpersonal sexism, so to put it.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Komane. We'll take Pastor Moyo, followed by Tobejani, and then Duli Lubata. Over to you, Moyo. Moyo? Yeah, over to you, Moyo. We can't hear you.
I cannot hear.
Let's go to Tobejani. We'll come back to Moyo. Please sort out your microphone, Moyo. We can't hear you. Let's go to Tobejani. We'll come back to you after Tobejani. We can't hear you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, thank you, leadership. I would like to touch on what Mr. Moyo said previously regarding the Omotoso trial in Eastern Cape. As Mr. Komane mentioned previously, that he's disputing the way that the manner in that the lawyer was interrogating that young woman. So, Mr. Moyo, let me educate you here. In our law.
No, Mr. Komane.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I would like to touch on that one. That in our law, what that lawyer was saying in that trial, in the eyes of the law, would say it's argumentum ad hominem. It was personal attack. Instead, although that lawyer was paid, he was supposed to question that young lady correctly, in a way that that lady has gone through a lot. So, Mr. Moyo was saying the lawyer is being paid, so he has to do his job. So I would like to touch on that one, that even if you are a lawyer and you're paid to do your job, there are certain principles in law that you need to follow. So he must take that into context. Thank you.
Thank you, Ndate Tovejani. I want to apologize to Ndate Moyo that Ndate Tovejani was confusing you with Mr. Mokgasho. So apologies for that, Mr. Moyo. Please don't litigate against me because I'm the one who's hosting this thing. So I'm apologizing upfront that Mr. Tovejani was confusing the same names. But over to you, Mr. Moyo. I hope this time we can hear you. Yeah. I'm telling you, Mr. Moyo, we can't hear you. Yeah. Okay. Let's go to Ntuli Batla. Then we'll go to Mr. Mokgasho.
Sediko, I saw Viola wanted to speak.
Let me go to. I'm still controlling the house.
You're holding the floor.
Yeah. Can we go to Ntuli Batla? Then we'll go to Mokgasho. Okay, when Ntuli Batla is no longer around, Mokgasho, please come in. Mokgasho?
Yes. I just a follow-up note to the speaker, and then a short also follow-up note to Ndate Ronaldo Tovejani. Thank you for that, Ndate Chairman. Joe, you know the challenge we have is between when you compare things of emotions and things that are written in law, you obviously have got two different animals. Yeah? In amplifying of the things of written law and things of emotions, comparing racism to apartheid, if you read of the Spanish Inquisition, yeah? What happened in the Spanish Inquisition was Christians oppressed all other non-Christian groups. There would be paganists, there would be Jews, there would be Judaists, and all the other groups. The subjugation thereof was never based on anybody's color. Okay? I just want to use that as a note, follow-up note, in amplifying my point that there are systems that are put into law to oppress or discriminate. And then there are things that you just harbor in emotions as humans that we walk on earth. That was one point. Christians versus Jews and other groups. There was no color in there, okay? So that was the point I wanted to make. Ndate Tovejani, when we talk of oppression by a group of people to another, by men to women, a lawyer, to prove a point, needs to be entitled to question a claimant. Now, I'm making this point because I would like us to avoid getting wound up in items that are not oppression by nature, because the subject of today is men oppressing women, and then we're just using the other examples to scientifically or mechanically help ourselves understand the process of oppression. I cannot be denied the right to interrogate a person because they are a woman and be disallowed to perform my duties. Do you get what I'm saying? I know there's laws protecting witnesses, and if there's such, the lawyer should be charged. As a result, when I television, there is no law or sub-law that you can use today in South Africa to charge the lawyer that you are referring to. Do you understand that? But a white person can be charged for example, openly calling a black person a kafir. Do you understand the differences? There is allowed statute to manage systems, and then there are things that are just emotion that we carry around with us as humans. I would leave the point there. Thank you.
Mr. Moyo, are you back? While we are still waiting for Mr. Moyo, let's take Viola. Let's take Viola.
Thank you very much, Chair. Even though I just joined the debate late, but at least I've managed to capture some facts presented by Ntate Komane and others. Chair, allow me, before I address Ntate Komane, let me start by your input, Commissioner. When you were talking about Section 11, when you were guiding the debates by quoting Section 11 of the Constitution that talks about the right of people to live, even though majority or some continue to contravene the very same Constitution by taking lives of others, Chair. I just wanted to provide clarity, and then I'm subjected to be corrected because Commissioner did mention that section. So my input regarding this particular section mentioned by the chairperson. I just want to indicate to this platform to say, Tate Commissioner, Tate Sediko, the very same Constitution that you talked about, especially Section 11, I believe that it was developed by people through processes. So, meaning that the very same Constitution can be reviewed, but obviously through proper processes must be followed, obviously, because remember, we are guided by the Constitution. So actually my emphasis is that it can't be correct that at all times in our discussions, when we start to open the discussions regarding death penalty, at all times, the document, this Constitution, is being used as if others are being protected by using that, the same Constitution that can be reviewed by us. Rather, my advice is that in future, in such debates, we must emphasize, we must outline the processes on how this Constitution can be reviewed in order to cater for death penalty. The point that I'm emphasizing is that there is no clause or section, but like I said, that the Komane and the Chair, I'm subjected to be corrected. I'm still learning. In the Constitution that prohibits us from reviewing the Constitution. So going back to the discussion, Chair, sorry for the debate, then the address at the Chair. Going back to the discussion that the Komane, if I've captured you correctly, I'm still subjected to be corrected because I've joined the debate late. You did mention the issue of patriarchy. So the issue of patriarchy, Tate Komane, in all the debates or the engagements that I came across, the word patriarchy consistently dominates all the discussions, meaning that one can conclude that actually this patriarchy, it is a virus. It is like this COVID-19. It's like this HIV virus that contributes to gender-based violence. So the question is, Ntate Komane, what is the solution of destroying this patriarchy completely for possible permanent solution? Because it can't be correct that we keep on dwelling on the problem rather than coming up with the solution. Because I believe that there are so many factors that contribute to this particular patriarchy. Our traditions, our cultures also, how the Sheba on its own. You can see where actually they were developed in order to suffocate or oppress women of this country. So my question is, what can be done? What can be done to destroy this patriarchy so that there must be progress, so that we must move on? Now we must start concentrating on issues of, like, for example, unemployment. So there are so many challenges at the same time. That is why we are so defocused, and then we are reactionaries. Normally we react when something happens. When a woman is being killed or murdered somewhere, it's only when we start with the discussions, and then we start to to discuss the issue of gender-based violence and so on. So basically my question is on that, for actually from, I know you are well equipped when it comes to knowledge and information. So I just want to check your view regarding how can we get rid of this patriarchy, like for good, permanently so. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, the Deputy Speaker of the Northwest Legislature. Can we go to Mr. Pastor Moyo? Then Mr. Komane will respond. Can you go to try again to bring in Pastor Moyo before you comment? Pastor Moyo?
Yes, Sediko, can you guys hear me now?
Yes,
Yes,
you
yes,
are
yes,
very
Pastor.
audible now.
Welcome.
Thanks a lot, guys. Well, a few things that I want to, in fact, I have one question for you, Chair, and as the host, and especially Mr. Joseph. But before I can maybe go deeper on my question, I just wanna, because I heard earlier the other gentleman before was interrupted by my network, talking about racism and all that. I think I will agree with you, say that a black man will never be a racist, because it's a system that was designed by white people, specifically for black people. So a black man will never be a racist. And but I want you to address us. Remember, as Sediko said, I'm a pastor. I want us to address, I want you to address us on the issue of patriarchy. Now, patriarchy coming from the root of Christianity. Because if you want to deal with the issue of gender-based violence, you must always remember that in the back of every reasonable man, there is an attitude that says, Christianity speaking, God allowed men to oppress women in a sense. I'll explain that further, but I want you to address the matter. How do you deal? How do you remove a negative attitude that people are having towards what God created a man to be? Because my belief is that, and my understanding that God created men not to dominate a woman. And two, my belief is that when you thoroughly read the Bible, it says he created them male and female. So when God created them male and female in the same on the same day, in other words, there is no one who is superior than the other. But going deeper and deeper, the understanding that people are having out there, they have created a system whereby a man becomes a superior than a woman in such a way that it's easier for men to hit a woman. That's one. So I want you to deal with the issue of patriarchy in a Christianity system, not just Christianity, in a religious setup, because you can go to even to the Islamic religion. There is that oppression that that has been created by the religion itself. Then secondly, I want you to deal with the issue of gender-based violence, but this time, when men are being abused, but they don't speak out. Those are two questions that I want you to deal with. Thanks a lot. Sediko? Joseph?
Yeah, I'm here. Can I go, Chairperson, can I proceed?
The chairperson is gone.
No, let us assume he's gone, then let us continue engaging. Life should
He
continue.
went to drink some tea.
Yes, yeah, he's still doing that. Let me start with the issue of patriarchy. Deputy Speaker Viola spoke about patriarchy. It's very consistent. It's everywhere. Every time people talk about it, it is the main narrative. We need to understand it so that we are able to dismantle it. And then how do we dismantle it? We are talking about issues of faces and spaces. And then we need to identify the faces. And then we said the faces, these are men, not only men there, but there are also women who are perpetuating patriarchy. So at the faces level, we need to address the issue of attitude. There needs to be a paradigm shift as to how people think. And then it cannot be a voluntary exercise. Speaker, I'm very happy that you are the deputy speaker. You need to see through to make sure that all the interventions that are implemented to address the issue of patriarchy are there from the legislature down into the departments. That is something which is very much important, because many a times when we're talking about campaigns, I don't have any problems with campaigns, but the problem with campaigns is that they are voluntary to be internalized, the messaging. But if you're talking curriculum, for example, if you're talking curriculum is very much important. It needs to start at school. It needs to be infused everywhere. That is why we are talking about gender mainstreaming. Mainstreaming meaning that every time we think about anything that we want to do for the betterment of the society, we need to infuse, we need to engender issues of gender equality. That is something which is very much important, because we need to equip people with necessary information. Skills, values, attitudes need to change. And then how do they change? Campaigns, I don't have any problem, but I think they are very ineffective in the sense that they will say, do this, do that, do this, do that. But from the religion level, it's very much important. Pastor, I'm sure you speak to many people every now and then, not only on Sunday. Many a times people come to you, they're looking for this and this and this, and these are strategic people. Pastor, I'm going to hold you accountable for this one. You are in strategic position to change the mindset of people. We start small within your church, and then we go. They should know that religion should not be used in order to suppress women. For example, I said patriarchy is a system. A system is also pervasive, meaning that it pervades. It falls into all aspects of our life in human religion, in the media and everywhere. So in the media and everywhere, there is this lady called Mary Daly. Mary Daly was a Christian, and then she decided to stop being a Christian precisely because she thought that Christianity was very, very oppressive. She said Christianity in particular as an example of religion. Yes, as an example of religion, because religion, an example of religion is Christianity. Christianity is not religion, it's part of religion, because we tend to confuse these things and we think they are more or less the same, whereas they are not. One is an example of the art. For example, gender-based violence is a face of oppression, but it's not oppression because there are many faces. It's like the Hydra, which has got many, many, many heads, but the body is the same, right? So, Pastor, in church, we know how oppressive is it. There are certain churches which do not allow, for example, women to be on their pulpit. Isn't that so? There are certain pastors who are pushing the narrative of male superiority. And then I am challenging to you that that particular narrative should stop. women should be allowed to take positions of power within that particular one. Let's start, when we are talking, we should take into account the fact that we are all equal. In fact, and in law, that is something which is very much important, because in law we are equal, but in fact, we are not equal. So there is equality in de jure, which is in law, but in de facto, it is not. So pastors are strategically positioned to ensure that they are changing the narrative of a woman. And then remember, women are different. They've got many identities. They don't have one identity. You are not only a woman, Viola, you are also a deputy speaker, you are also a daughter, you are also a wife, you are also a friend, you are also a colleague, you are also black, you are also young. Those are the identities of you. You are a postmodernist subject. You are constituted of many multiple sets. So when people are coming with interventions to deal with patriarchy, they need to take that into account. They should not think that women are homogeneous. They are not monolithic. They've got varieties. There are women who are professionals. There are women who are in the rural areas, working in the farms and so on and so forth. So when we come with intervention, we should not assume that one size will fit all. That particular approach is very problematic. It won't yield the results that we would like to see. But we need to be informed by the context. The context in which we are need to inform us so that we understand the problem. Because I think the problem with South Africa in general, beyond deputy speaker and pastor, is because we are failing to identify the problem. Diagnosis is a serious one. That is why we keep on coming with up so many interventions, so many policies, so many plans, so many strategic thrusts and calls, so many narratives about how we go about solving the problem, whereas we have not mastered the skill or the craft of identifying what is the deep-seated cause of this particular problem. Because once you have done that, then you will definitely have no problem. I've already identified that patriarchy is pervasive, it's in church. The pastor has got the responsibility to change the narrative. Actually, I'm willing to come to your church, pastor, so that I can listen to you. Whether are you pushing that particular narrative of equality in fact and law?
Colleagues, I've got a challenge with my speakers. I can't hear. I'm requesting Ndate Moyo to chair for now while I'm sorting out my speakers because I can't hear. So Ndate Moyo, can I request you to chair for now? I'm sorting out my speakers. I'm coming back. There's a challenge.
Okay,
no
problem.
I can't hear.
So in a way, in a way, okay. I am just combining the two factors, the two issues raised by Pastor and Viola, to say that they are in the media, for example, Viola. I don't know, but as a legislator, you are a legislator, you come up with laws at the provincial level that influence what is happening at the national level. So I don't understand why we would have adverts that are still trivializing the role of women in the society, that are still saying women's place is in the kitchen. We need to change that. We have got institutions like ICASA, for example. If an advert comes out, we need to assess it based on a certain criteria. And inbuilt in that particular criteria is the issue of whether are you advancing the narrative of transformation from gender equality point of view in the media, in parliament and everywhere. I know that you are addressing that. But issue of representation and participation are not the only issues when coming to transformation. Representation, there are many women in parliament. I've seen them there. They're in executive positions. Participation, they still experience problems. All these phases that I've spoken about, they still experience them. We call it the class labyrinth. They're still hindrances. Just because they're women, there are still certain challenges that they are facing in the workplace, in the mining sector, in the services sector, and so on and so forth, in church as well. Because people's mindsets are still there, they have not changed. They're still conservative. They're still traditional women. But these women cannot tell me anything. And then remember, oppression can be unconscious. Sometimes you are unintentional, you are unconscious, you are not aware of that. And it can also be subtle. You cannot see it in It's not like we call it civilized oppression. Civilized oppression in close inverted commas, in the sense that you cannot see it. It's subtle. You need to be very smart in order to pick it up. Otherwise, it will go undetected. So it is living on the edge of awareness. So how do you, and that is that, because of the policies that we are having, Viola, that are addressing issues of gender equality. Now, racism, sexism, patriarchy, they've gone underground. That means now they are on the edge of that, not on the edge of awareness. So you need to be very strategic, very, very, very smart in order to detect that, because you can't see them. Everybody knows that to say K-weight, for example, the K-weight, it is not allowed. It is unconstitutional. They don't say it, but the way in which they're interacting with black people, you will see that they are saying it K-weight. That is what is called subtle oppression, subtle racism, and so on. And then another important thing for researchers. In South Africa, I've gone through the scholarly work that is done. We have never taken any time to research and investigate about the conditions of the offenders. I call them offenders. I don't want to call them perpetrators, because if you're saying perpetrators, it's like you're demonizing them to such an extent that nobody's going to be able to expose them. But if you're saying it's an offender, I think it's much acceptable. But if you're saying it's a perpetrator, then it's something else. Because these people they are living with us. They are our husbands, they are our girlfriends, they are our wives, they are our brothers, and then they are our pastors. I'm not referring to you, pastor. They are our deputy speakers and so on and so forth. Those are the people who are perpetuating oppression. So they are offending. They are offenders, right? Maila, you mentioned the issue of the Jews being suppressed. That's not racism. That is the Germans and the Jews, the Holocaust. That is an expression of, we call it anti-Semitism. In other words, that is ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism. The privileging of one culture over another is called ethnocentrism. Over to you, Pastor. I think I will
okay. Thank you. I'm back now. Thank you so much. And I think you have touched on various points. I will take last round of comments and hands. Then we can close. I'll take the last round of hands, comments, then we can close. Okay. I can see a hand from Commissioner Dibiela. Commissioner Dibiela, over to you. Commissioner Dibiela. I don't know if she's...
Oh, our brain work the same. We share the same brain, me and her.
Okay.
Oh, that's good.
Yes.
Commissioner Dibiela.
Is she back?
Yeah, she's here, but her hand was up. But okay, let's look at others who wants to comment.
Yeah, because we share the same brain with her.
Mohaila?
Yes, my commander.
Yes.
In closing, when Sediko Rakolote and Joe, we must appreciate the courage, gentlemen, because it's going to take men in this country to actually bring to an end the current atrocities we see, witness against our women. And it is something that we must applaud. I want to say with utmost appreciation that we as men need to shape up and defend our women and children. Okay, that is just the point I wanted to make, closing on my other points. And in response to one item raised by Viola on how we end this bad behavior by males towards females. And it is a personal opinion of mine in response to that inquiry, and also in corroboration of a point she made in her own speech, that nothing stops us from reviewing our constitution. You see, we've got a constitution that belongs to the people and shall be reviewed by the people. On top of that, in building on top of that point, I have an assertion that any person that walks around with a self-imposed license to take a life, that person is ready to give up a life of their own. And hence, as the people, should work on our constitution to assist those that are willing to take life to also exit the same way they have made others exit. I'm going to leave it right there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Pastor.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Sediko. Tata Joseph and everybody on the show, on this meeting. It's unfortunately because when we deal with the issue of gender-based violence, we deal with it on the surface. We don't go deeper. I think there are 3 institutions that if we don't deal with them, in the next 100 years, we'll be talking about just gender-based violence. The first one I mentioned, it is religion. Religion plays a huge role in promoting gender-based violence. I know some of the things that I'm saying, some of the pastors would be like, Moyo Yashan and all that. But the fact of the matter that a man, in this sense, a man, when we talk about gender, becomes a god in a church, it's a problem. And then everybody, a young boy, when he sees the pastor being worshipped as God and being acknowledged, and the ladies are not being acknowledged properly, in his mind there is a seed that is being planted that says, one day I want to be like this. So religion plays a huge role in promoting gender-based violence. Number 2, culture. Our African culture. We don't want to talk about it, but it does. Here in KwaZulu-Natal, you'll find a phrase where a man will be like, voice. So in other words, a woman does not raise her voice when speaking with a man, but a man can raise his voice when speaking with a woman. So now, you want to deal with the issue of gender-based violence. How do you deal with it when you have a culture that promotes the headship of a man in a wrong way? Because culture says, indoda inhloko yomuzi. So now, there's nothing that you can say or do to inhloko yomuzi. Whatever you say is restricted by the phrase that says, or a phrase that says, indoda inhloko yomuzi. So now, how do you then, because Sediko, you cannot talk about a man, a young man that has been raised in a home where a man of the house has been ordering people around. And when this person grows up, he says to himself, one day I want to be like my father. I want to take authority of the house, and I won't be told by a woman what to do. And when a woman who's now educated, who knows the right and all that, will say, then you cannot talk to me like that, then a system of beating a woman begins. So in other words, we cannot deal with the issue of gender-based violence on the surface. We must go deep. We must uproot it in religions, we must uproot it in cultures, whether it's a Zulu culture, whether it's a Tswana culture, but all cultures all together, they have somehow promoted a man over a woman in a sense that a man becomes a god over a woman, which is now wrong. And thirdly, even politically, it does not assist us in fighting gender-based violence. What we are doing nowadays in this country, we are not dealing with the roots of the problem, but we are dealing with the fruits of the root of the problem. That somebody has killed a woman somewhere, then there will be march, there will be T-shirts and all that, stop gender-based violence and all that. But the problem is still there, down there, that we need to deal with. Now, let me go back to what the Bible says. Dr. Joseph and everybody that is listening to in this meeting. When you read the book of Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, 27, and 28, it clearly says, and God said, let us make men in our image. The man there does not speak about gender. When you go to Septuagint, trying to understand the Bible, it says, and God said, let us make human beings in our image. And it says, and God created he, them, male and female. And God blessed them. Now, but the confusion is chapter 2 of Genesis, where now God takes a woman out of the man's rib. But the issue is, he created them equally in the beginning. So the issue of God saying a man is the head of the church, he was not talking about superiority, but he was talking about the roles that a man must play in his household, but not in society. When I go out to a meeting with my wife, to the committee meeting, we are equal. But when I'm home, we are not equal, but there are responsibilities that she must take and I must take. But God created us to be on the same level. There is no man that was created to be above woman, full stop. But in dealing with this matter, we must zoom in religion, we must zoom in the issue of culture, we must zoom in the issue of politics. Then we'll be able to fight gender-based violence. Thanks, Chair and Dr. Joseph. We can't hear you, Sediko. We cannot hear you. I'll mute your mic.
I'm saying thank you, Pastor Moyo. Thank you so much. If the members of your congregation are listening to you, or even some pastors are listening to you, they can march against you and say this man must be removed from this religion. But anyway, Dr. Vejani, please come in. We are about to.
Yes, I would like to add on what Mr. Moyo has been saying. Mr. Moyo is right. This issue of patriarchy and gender-based violence is embedded in things such as religion and cultural customs. Let's take in Nigeria, for instance, the issue of Boko Haram in Nigeria, where about 200 girls were kidnapped. So, and I stand to be corrected on this one. I think if we can translate what Boko Haram means, I think it means that education for a girl child is a sin. So we need to resolve such complexities first in order to fight this pandemic of gender-based violence and patriarchy. And if this thing of gender-based violence, I think it starts from in households. If a young boy grows up in a family where he sees his father beating up his mother, so that boy will grow up thinking the best way to reprimand a woman. It's wrong. That's why a charity begins at home. So this thing of patriarchy, gender-based violence, it's being passed from generation to generation. And if we are not acting now to stop this thing, it will not end. It will just circulate. It will.
We are listening to you, Dr. Tovejani. Okay, we welcome Steve Letsike in our group, a chairperson of South African National AIDS Council. Welcome, Steve Letsike. But Tovejani, can you continue? Okay. Any further comments before we give over to Komane?
Yes, can I comment, Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, yes, Umfundisi has just reminded me that I'm an evangelist. Yeah,
Okay.
he's correct when he links the issue of gender-based violence with religion and culture. He is on point. And the first cases of gender-based violence are actually reported in the Bible. When you go to the book of Leviticus, you go to the book of Deuteronomy, you also go to 2 Samuel chapter 13. 2 Samuel chapter 13 talks about the story of Tamar, who was a daughter to David and a full brother to Absalom. And she was a half brother. I've forgotten the name of this guy. What happened with this story of Tamar in the Bible? What happened is the half brother had a lust for Tamar. Then he eventually raped Tamar. He pretended to be sick so that Tamar can nurse him. Then in that process he raped Tamar. There we have rape and incest within that particular thing. Read 2 Samuel chapter 13. You will get the whole story. But the other thing that I wanted it's as old as the hills, this particular thing of gender-based violence. Then what I wanted to raise is I do identify myself with the comrades that were talking about the death penalty. I can understand where they are coming from. Because, for an example, we have so many good legislations as a country, and we have so many systems and structures that are in place that aims to deal with gender-based violence. The processes that we have all what it takes to tackle gender-based violence. But where lies the problem? The problem is with implementation. That's where our main problem is. If all those that are involved were doing their work as expected and to the maximum, we wouldn't even be talking about the death penalty, because those that were supposed to expose, speak out, they were going to speak out. Those that were supposed to arrest were going to do their jobs without any bribes, without any favors. Those that are supposed to prosecute, they were going to do that. We are going to have a well-oiled justice system that actually implements as per the expectation until it goes to the correctional part. But there is a lot of things that comes in between that affects the implementation of what needs to be done. Hence, we find ourselves as a country in this particular situation. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you so much. And let me check. Mr. Moyo, is your hand up?
It's Mohashwa here. I wanted to just throw in the last one before you hand over to the speaker to close, my good chair. It is a request, you see. I don't want to open a can of worms now. It is a request for the speaker to organize another meeting in which we will talk about their relations then in the home occupied by a man and a woman. I have got a lot of points to raise, more hazards than points. If we to try and veer away from the cultures or some of the cultures that we have, I would like to caution us as a community to watch against getting lost in time. There's a very simple biological reason why my wife cannot open a bottle of mayonnaise and she brings it to me. And there's a very simple biological reason why I cannot do some of the finer things that she does. And it is a point I want to ask the speaker to please formulate as a session like this one in a very short time where we can meet again and break it down.
Thank you, Mr. Mogashwa. I want to challenge you to become a presenter on that day, so that you can lead.
Challenge accepted.
You'll lead in that presentation. We can engage offline on how we formulate the topic. Over to you, Mr. Komane. Unmute, Mr. Komane, unmute. Unmute your...
Oh, thank you very much. And then in closing, I think we all agree that oppression is injurious, is characterized by cruelty, is humanizing, and also limits opportunities for the oppressed. It's about power, it's about privilege, it's about status. So it's about othering. It's about pushing others to the edge in terms of accessing certain resources and also in terms of enjoying human rights. It's about creating a condition for second and third class citizenship. That is not something that we're looking for. And then we all agree that gender-based violence is a manifestation of oppression, meaning where there is gender-based violence, whether it takes place within the family setup, whether it is within departments or in the workplace, it is probative of the existence of oppression. That is gender-based violence. And its effects are psychological, are physical, emotional, they are far-reaching, so to speak. And then because it's about power relations, when we are questioning the discourse, we need to adopt what is called critical social theory. Critical social theory is about critiquing the knowledge, the power, the status, the culture. It's about looking for the absences and listening to the silences. It's about turning matters upside down so that we understand the structure in which social relations are embedded. So it's about making sure that we understand and conceptualize gender-based violence as interconnected with other isms, racism, heterosexism, and so on and so forth. That's something which is very much important. And then it's no longer, we must push that gender-based violence, the intervention that are intended to address that. We must push them to the core of every program. They should not be about campaigns. They should be at the core of the curriculum. They should be at the core of what the legislators are doing. They should be at the core of our policies. And then another important thing, we need to think about beyond seeing gender equality as being about representation and participation. It's also about dismantling the system, the structures that are undergirded by patriarchy, a system which is ideological, which is based on power hierarchies that privileges men and disadvantages women. We need to talk about the way in which language is used in order to push a particular narrative about women. So let us develop monitoring and evaluation in the process, systems in place in every intervention that we're doing. Because campaigns are campaigns, I understand they raise awareness. Then once there's an awareness, there is nothing else. Look for the faces, men, women, all of them have to be exposed. There needs to be a paradigm shift to the way in which women see themselves. They are not inferior. They are neither inferior, they must understand. And men should also equally understand that they are neither superior. There is only one race to which we all belong, and that is human race. And the same can be said about racism. All the projects that are intended to do that. There is human race. We cannot be dissecting and fragmenting people, saying these are women, these are, all these things are socially constructed. Sex, gender, socially constructed. Thank you very much. I hope that people understand that gender-based violence is a tool for subjugation. So people are committing gender-based violence to women because they want to oppress them. It's a tool of subjugation, the face of oppression. So let us understand it as such, and I hope that in our efforts, every time, it's not something that we can come here and talk about it. we must breathe it. We must think about it. We must behave it. We must think, act, and behave accordingly in keeping with that vision of creating a non-racial, non-sexist, just society. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Komane. In closing, when I'm summarizing whatever was said by all of us, is that we need more engagement on the issue of gender-based violence in order for us to come up with solutions to end gender-based violence once and for all in our country. We are saying gender-based violence is a form of conflict. And when you look at the issues of conflict, there's a sociological perspective in terms of conflict, and there's a psychological perspective in terms of conflict. One of the scholars called Bradshaw identifies the basis of conflict, and he gives 4 bases in terms of conflict. He talks about value-based conflict, which is caused by religion, politics, and ideological values. That is value-based conflict. He talks about interest-based conflict. The interest-based conflict, it comes when people compete over economic opportunities. So Mr. Mohasho, when the employer and the employee are relating at workplace, they are competing for economic opportunities. That is interest-based conflict. So it is also a form of a violence. We've got also needs-based conflict. This talks about the need for identity, for security, and for control. In terms of the identity, it's about sexual orientation. So conflict on its, gender-based violence on its own is a form of conflict. We should take it as a form of conflict, particularly sociological conflict. Yes, it tends to become physical and it becomes psychological, but the basis of gender-based violence starts from sociological perspective. And that was what Mr. Komane was saying. He highlighted the importance of us looking at the economic status of women, the cultural status of women. Furthermore, he spoke about the gender equality, where he raised the issue of procedural equality and substantive equality. But in closing, he spoke about quantitative representation and qualitative representation. Thank you so much, colleagues, for participating. There is a challenge from Mr. Mohasho that we need to delve into the issue of culture in our next engagement. We'll engage Mr. Mohasho offline and do preparations for our next engagement. Have a lovely afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Keep safe, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, bonsoir, and madams.